I never thought a single text could change my life forever. That day, my son, Michael, sent me a message that cut deeper than any knife. If you don't want to go to the nursing home, get a job. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling. This was the boy I had raised, the boy I had given everything to, suddenly telling me I was disposable. I forced a smile. Disposable, huh? I whispered to myself. As I stepped out of my small apartment, still in disbelief, a sleek black car slowed beside me. The window rolled down, and a man with a warm smile said, "Excuse me, ma'am. Need a ride?" Something about the timing made my heart race. I didn't know then, but this moment was the first twist in a chain of events that would leave my son begging for forgiveness. When I look back now, I realize my whole life was about giving. Giving love, giving time, giving everything I had, until there was nothing left for me. I grew up in a small town outside Manchester. Life wasn't easy, but I always believed that hard work and kindness could fix anything. When I became a mother, that belief only grew stronger. My son, Michael, was my whole world. After his father left us when Michael was just 6, I became both mother and father. I worked long hours as a school teacher by day and took tutoring jobs by night. There were days when I came home so tired that I could barely keep my eyes open, but one smile from Michael made it all worth it. He was such a bright boy, curious, sharp, always asking questions. When other children played outside, Michael sat with me at the table, practicing his spelling and telling me how one day he'd buy me a big house by the sea. He'd say, "You'll never have to work again, Mom. I'll take care of you." And I believed him. Every word. Years passed. Michael grew up, went to university, and got a great job in London. I was so proud, and my heart could barely hold the joy. He met a woman named Claire, smart, confident, and beautiful. At first, I was happy for him. I thought, finally, my boy has found someone to share his life with. But soon, small things started to change. Michael's visits became shorter. His calls became rarer. And Claire, she had a way of talking to me that made me feel small. Polite, but cold. She'd say things like, "Jean, you should let us handle your finances now. It's safer that way." Or, "You're not getting any younger. Maybe it's time you slow down." I brushed it off at first, thinking she meant well. But over time, their tone changed. It wasn't care. It was control. After I retired from teaching, I thought I'd finally rest. I moved into a small apartment, surrounded by books, plants, and peace. I lived simply: tea in the morning, a walk in the park, a bit of reading. I didn't need much, but for Michael, that wasn't enough. He began to treat me like a burden, like someone who couldn't think for herself anymore. Every conversation ended with, "Mom, you should really let us take over." It stung every single time. One afternoon, when I told him I didn't want to move into a care home, his face hardened. He sighed and said those words that broke something inside me. "If you don't want to go to the nursing home, get a job." It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it. Cold, empty, like he was talking to a stranger. I sat there for a long time after he left. The clock ticked, the tea went cold, and I just stared at the wall asking myself, where did I go wrong? How did the boy who once held my hand and promised to protect me become this man who saw me as an inconvenience? That night I barely slept. Memories of his childhood kept flashing before me. His first bike, his school concerts, the nights he'd cry because his father missed another birthday. I was always there, always, and now he was ready to throw me away like an old book nobody reads anymore. The next morning, I decided something. I wasn't going to cry anymore. If my son thought I was weak, then that's exactly what I wanted him to believe. For now. I started paying attention. Every word, every tone, every hesitation. I noticed how Claire handled the finances, how Michael trusted her blindly, how she made subtle remarks about planning for the future. I began to see the cracks forming, little things they thought I was too old to notice. Michael mentioned one day that Claire was investing in some Business deals. He said proudly, "She's brilliant with money." Mom. But something in her eyes told me otherwise. A flicker of greed. A glimmer of calculation. I knew that if I pushed too hard, they'd just shut me out completely. So I stayed quiet, smiled when they visited, nodded when they spoke down to me. They thought I was fading, but in reality I was watching, learning, waiting. Weeks went by, and I started to piece things together. Late-night phone calls, strange bank documents left on the table, nervous glances between them. Something was going on. Something big. And I knew deep down that the woman my son trusted with everything was the same woman who would one day destroy him. That was when I realized I had a choice. I could stay the helpless old woman they thought I was, or I could remind them who raised the man, who built their world. I chose the second. So I started preparing, quietly, carefully. Every move had to be planned. Every step had to be deliberate, because revenge, real revenge, and doesn't come from anger. It comes from patience. And as I poured myself another cup of tea that evening, I looked out the window and whispered, "You think I'm done, Michael?" "No, I'm just getting started." I remember the day everything truly began to change. It was a gray Thursday morning. Rain tapped softly against my window, and the world felt unusually heavy. Michael had called the night before, asking me to come over to help him organize some old documents for tax season. I hesitated, but I said yes. Part of me hoped maybe we could talk, really talk, like we used to. But deep down, I knew something else was brewing beneath his calm words. When I reached his apartment, Claire opened the door. She looked perfect as always, every hair in place, every smile carefully measured. "Jean," she said, her voice sweet but distant, "you're early." "I wanted to make sure I wasn't in your way," I replied. She laughed softly, a sound that somehow felt like mockery. "Oh, you could never be in the way," she said, and walked off before I could respond. Michael was in his study, surrounded by files and papers. He looked stressed, really stressed. "Mom," he said without looking up, "I just need your help sorting through these. Don't touch the folders marked personal, just the business ones." I nodded quietly and started sorting. But as I went through the stack, one of the personal folders accidentally slid open. A bank statement peeked out, numbers I couldn't ignore even if I tried. I froze. There were large withdrawals, and the recipient name repeated over and over, Claire Reynolds, tens of thousands. Gone. I felt my heart skip a beat. I shouldn't have looked, I told myself, but I couldn't stop. Page after page showed transfers from Michael's account to hers, and then I saw something worse, a signature. Michael's name, but the handwriting wasn't his. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. I tucked the papers back quietly, pretending I hadn't seen a thing. Michael turned toward me. "Everything all right, Mom?" I forced a smile. "Yes, dear. Just taking my time. I don't want to mix anything up." He nodded and went back to typing, completely unaware that his world was beginning to crack. That night, when I returned home, I sat in silence for a long time. The rain hadn't stopped. It beat against my window like the rhythm of my thoughts, steady, relentless. "She's stealing from him," I whispered to myself. "And he doesn't even know." For a moment, I wanted to call him right away and tell him everything. But I stopped. Michael wouldn't believe me, not now. Not when he trusted Claire more than he trusted his own mother. He'd think I was being dramatic. He'd probably defend her, maybe even accuse me of snooping. I could already hear his words. "Mom, please, stop meddling in my marriage." No, I couldn't tell him. Not yet. Instead, I decided to dig deeper. Over the next few days, I began visiting quietly, under the excuse of helping organize more things. I watched. I listened. Claire spent a lot of time on her phone, whispering, deleting messages the moment she saw me glance her way. One afternoon, while she was out, I noticed a small envelope sticking out from under a drawer. It had my son's name on it. Curious, I pulled it out. Inside was a letter, half finished, maybe a draft. And it was from Claire. She had written, "Michael, I know you'll be angry, but I need to use your account again for a short time. It's for the investment. Trust me, this is temporary." Investment. That word stayed in my mind for days. I knew Claire wasn't in any legitimate business. She worked part-time, claimed she was between ventures, but her lifestyle said otherwise. Designer bags, weekend trips, endless shopping sprees. Michael was funding it all, unknowingly. I started keeping a little notebook, every observation, every slip of tongue, every piece of evidence I could find. Times, dates, names. If I was going to stop her and save my son, I needed proof, and I needed to be smart about it. Weeks passed. The tension between us grew, but none of us said anything directly. Claire's fake smiles became tighter, Michael's patience thinner, and I became quieter. One evening, I overheard them arguing behind a closed door. Michael's voice was sharp. "Claire, where's the money from the joint account?" "It's missing again." She hesitated. "It's just tied up in the investment." "I told you already." "In what investment, Claire? You've never shown me a thing." There was a long silence. Then her tone changed, colder, angrier. "Are you accusing me, Michael? After everything I've done for you? Accusing me, Michael? After everything I've done for you?" I didn't hear what came after. The door opened suddenly, and I had to pretend I was in the kitchen. Michael stormed out, red-faced, and grabbed his coat. He barely looked at me as he left. Claire followed soon after, slamming the door. I stood alone in that apartment, heart pounding. I could feel it now. The storm was coming. Later that night, when I checked my phone, I saw a message from Michael. "Mom, sorry about tonight. Things are complicated. I'll call you tomorrow." But he didn't. Days went by. Then weeks. He stopped answering my calls. Every time I tried, Claire picked up instead, saying, "He's busy, John. He'll call when he can." That's when I knew she was isolating him, just like she had planned from the start. But what she didn't know was that she had underestimated me. I wasn't some old, fragile woman who could be pushed aside. I had taught hundreds of children, faced years of hardship, and survived worse than her lies. I knew how to be patient. I knew how to observe. And I knew how to strike when the time was right. So I began reaching out to people I trusted. Old friends, former colleagues, even one of Michael's old co-workers who had quietly left the company after discovering some shady dealings Claire had been involved in. Piece by piece, the puzzle was forming. Claire wasn't just stealing from Michael. She was planning something much bigger. She was preparing to disappear. With everything. I knew then that if I didn't act soon, my son would lose everything. His money, his reputation, and the very life he had built. And so, I made a decision, a quiet, cold, unshakable decision. I wasn't going to warn him. I was going to show him who she really was, and when the truth came out, it wouldn't just save him, it would destroy her. That night, as I turned off the lights and lay in bed, I whispered to myself, "You wanted me to get a job, Michael? Fine. My new job is protecting you from the woman you think you love." When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I felt was calm. It was the kind of calm that comes after pain, when tears have dried and something stronger takes their place. I knew what I had to do now. I wasn't going to cry for Michael anymore. I wasn't going to beg for attention or wait for calls that never came. I was going to take control, just like I used to. The teacher in me had returned, patient, observant, strategic. I started by gathering information quietly. I went to Michael's office one afternoon with homemade cookies, acting like the cheerful, clueless mother. His co-workers smiled politely, but one of them, a kind young woman named Sophie, looked nervous when I mentioned Claire. Later, as we stood near the coffee machine, Sophie whispered, "Mrs. Jean, Claire's been coming here a lot lately. She's been meeting Mr. Dawson, the company's financial director, and it doesn't look professional." My heart raced, but I kept my face calm. I thanked her and left, but inside, I was burning. Claire wasn't just taking his money. She was getting involved in something inside his company, too. Something dangerous. That night, I called an old friend, Daniel. He had worked as an accountant for years and owed me a favor. I told him I needed help checking some investment files for my son, pretending it was all routine. Daniel agreed. "Send me whatever you can find, Jean. I'll keep it quiet." Now the challenge was to get those files without raising suspicion. I planned my next visit carefully. When I arrived, Michael was on a business trip and Claire was home alone. She greeted me with her usual false smile. "Jean, what a surprise," I smiled back warmly. "I thought I'd bring you some lasagna. You've been working so hard." Her guard lowered immediately. "That's so sweet of you. Come in." While she poured herself a glass of wine, I pretended to look for plates in the kitchen. That's when I saw her laptop open on the counter. Emails were flashing across the screen, and one caught my eye. Subject: transfer complete. Cayman account. I took a photo quickly before the screen locked. My hands were shaking, but I kept smiling when she returned. We ate together like old friends. She talked about her future plans, about how she and Michael were thinking of moving abroad. Her tone was casual, but her eyes glimmered with excitement, like someone counting money that wasn't yet theirs. After dinner, I left quietly, thanking her for the company. The moment I got home, I sent the photo to Daniel. He called back within an hour. "Jean, that's serious," he said, voice low. "That's not an investment account. That's an offshore shell account. And it's not in Michael's name. It's in hers." I sat there in silence. "It was worse than I thought," Daniel continued. "She's moving money illegally. If Michael's name is linked to any of it, he could lose everything. His job, his reputation, even face charges." For a moment, fear gripped me. But then, determination took over. I said quietly, "Then we need to stop her before she disappears." Over the next few days, Daniel helped me gather more evidence. He traced transactions, collected screenshots, and built a small digital folder. Every transfer, every connection, every false signature. Meanwhile, I acted like everything was normal. I called Claire now and then, asking if she needed help with anything. Sometimes she ignored me, sometimes she replied sweetly, her fake charm never slipping. But then something unexpected happened. Michael finally called. His voice was tired, broken. "Mom, things have been rough. Claire and I aren't seeing eye to eye. I think she's hiding something." I stayed calm. "You're just realizing that now?" He sighed deeply. "I don't know what to do. I trusted her completely. Maybe you were right." I wanted to tell him everything then, every piece of proof I had, but I held back. "It wasn't the right time, Michael," I said softly. "Sometimes the truth reveals itself when we stop looking so hard for lies." He didn't understand what I meant, but I knew he soon would. I decided to set the stage for her downfall, carefully, publicly. I invited them both for dinner at my house that weekend. I told them it was to celebrate family. Claire loved the idea. She never missed a chance to look like the perfect daughter-in-law. The night arrived. I cooked Michael's favorite meal, the one he hadn't had since childhood, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes. The smell filled the house, warm and comforting. When they arrived, I greeted them with hugs. Claire looked stunning, wearing expensive jewelry and a diamond bracelet I'd never seen before. As we sat down to eat, I noticed Michael's distant stare. He looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that comes from disappointment. After dessert, I poured tea and smiled gently. "I wanted to talk about something," I began. Claire looked curious. "What's that, Jean?" I pulled out a small envelope from my drawer and placed it on the table. "Something I think you both should see." Her expression flickered. She tried to stay calm, but her hand gripped the cup a little too tightly. Michael opened the envelope. Inside were printed copies of the offshore transfers, the fake signatures, the Cayman account details. Silence. Then Michael's voice, trembling. "What? What is this?" Claire laughed nervously. "Jean, this must be a misunderstanding. These are fake." "You're accusing me?" I looked her straight in the eye. "You've been taking money from my son for months, moving it offshore. lying to him. But it ends tonight. Her face went pale. Michael turned toward her, voice rising. Is it true, Claire? Tell me. She stammered, reaching for words, but none came. I could see it in her eyes. She knew it was over. I stood up slowly. You told me once, Claire, that I should let younger people handle the future. Well, here's the future. The one you built with lies. Michael pushed back his chair, disbelief turning to fury. How could you do this to me? He shouted. But Claire didn't answer. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was heavy. Michael sank into a chair, face buried in his hands. Mom, what have I done? He whispered. I put a hand on his shoulder. You trusted the wrong person, but it's not too late to make it right. The next morning, we went to the authorities together. With Daniel's help, all the documents were submitted. Claire's accounts were frozen within days. Michael's company launched an internal investigation and cleared his name. For the first time in years, I saw him cry. He hugged me and said, Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything I said. For how I treated you. And I said softly, You told me to get a job, remember? Well, I did. My job was saving you. That night, I sat on my porch under the soft glow of the streetlight. The air felt lighter, cleaner. Justice had found its way, not through shouting or anger, but through quiet planning and patience. Sometimes revenge doesn't look like destruction. Sometimes it's simply the truth, delivered at the perfect moment, and I had delivered it. The next morning, I woke up before the sun had even touched the curtains. The house was silent. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I had spent weeks preparing for this day, the day I would take back my dignity, and show my son exactly who he had dismissed so easily. I dressed neatly, put on my favorite light blue sweater, and tied my hair back. Then I stood by the window, watching the same car pull up in front of the house, the one I had called the night before. It stopped quietly by the gate and the driver got out, holding a file in his hand. When Ryan came downstairs, yawning and scrolling through his phone, I said calmly, Ryan, we need to talk. He didn't even look up. Mom, not now. I'm late for work, I smiled gently. This will only take a minute. The driver entered the living room, handing me the document. Ryan frowned. Who's this? Document. Ryan frowned. Who's this? This, I said, looking straight at him, is Mr. Collins. He's from the law firm that helped me set things right. He looked confused. Set what right? I placed the file on the table and slid it toward him. You told me to get a job or go to a nursing home. So I found a new place to live, and a way to make sure you never control me again. He opened the file and his face turned pale. Inside were the papers proving that I had sold the house, the very one he had claimed as his future inheritance. Every penny from the sale had been transferred to a trust in my name, managed by the same company that had offered me the consulting position. Ryan's mouth fell open. You sold the house? Are you insane? That's our home. No, Ryan, I said quietly. It was my home. The one I bought with your father. The one I maintained while you and Lily lived here rent-free. The one you said I didn't deserve to stay in? He slammed his hand on the table. You can't do this. Oh, but I already did, I replied. My voice didn't shake anymore. You wanted me to work? I found a job. You wanted me to stop depending on you? I made sure I never will again. Lily came down the stairs holding their baby. What's going on? She asked, startled. Ryan pointed at me angrily. Your mother-in-law just sold the house. We have nowhere to go. Lily's eyes widened. You did what? I looked at her softly. I gave you both enough chances to treat me with respect. I loved you like my own daughter, Lily. But both of you forgot I was a person, not just an old woman to order around. Lily tried to calm Ryan, but he pushed past her and shouted, Mom, this isn't fair. I looked at him for a long moment, then said gently, Neither was what you did to me. The driver placed a small envelope on the table. This is for you, I said. It's a 3-month notice and enough money for a rental deposit. I'm not cruel. I just don't want to be treated like a burden anymore. Ryan's face twisted between shock, anger, and guilt. For the first time, he had no words. I turned toward the window and watched the car waiting outside. "I'll be leaving today," I said, picking up my small suitcase. Lily began to cry softly. "Jean, please, you don't have to go like this." But I had to, because staying would mean accepting their disrespect again. When I stepped outside, the cool air brushed my face. Mr. Collins opened the car door, and I sat inside, looking one last time at the house I had once called home. Ryan stood at the doorway, frozen, watching me go. As we drove away, memories flashed in my mind: his first day of school, his college graduation, the day he married Lily. Every moment I had lived for him, given everything I had. But today, I was living for myself. A few days later, I settled into a cozy seaside apartment that came with my new job, managing events and consulting at a retirement community. The staff respected me, the residents welcomed me, and for the first time in years, I felt seen. One evening, as I was helping organize a charity dinner, my phone rang. It was Ryan. I hesitated before answering. "Mom?" His voice was quiet, almost broken. I'm sorry. I didn't realize how cruel I sounded that day. "Lily and we've been struggling since you left." I took a deep breath. "I know, Ryan, and I hope this struggle teaches you what real respect means. I didn't think you'd actually leave," he whispered. "I didn't think you'd ever push me that far," I replied softly. There was silence on the other end. "I love you." "Mom," he finally said. I smiled sadly. "I love you too, son. But love doesn't mean staying where you're not valued." When I hung up, I felt tears in my eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. I had done the hardest thing a mother could ever do: stand up to her own child and reclaim her worth. That night, as I watched the sun set over the ocean, I whispered to myself, I didn't lose a home. I found myself again. In the end, I realized something powerful. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who forget our value first. But life gives us the strength to remind them, not with anger, but with action. Never let anyone make you feel small, no matter your age. Respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you command through courage and self-worth. If my story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Jean's Stories, where every story reminds you of one truth: no one can take your power away if you don't let them. Thank you for listening. When I moved into my new apartment by the sea, everything felt different. The air was lighter. The sound of the waves felt like they were washing away all the hurt I had carried for years. For the first time, I woke up without fear of being unwanted. I spent my mornings walking along the beach, greeting strangers who smiled back without judgment. People there didn't see me as an aging burden. They saw me as a woman who still had a voice, still had worth, still had life left to live. I started working part-time at the retirement community. My job was to help organize events, but what I really did was help people find purpose again, just like I had. I shared stories, taught them to paint, and planned small trips to the nearby gardens. Every time someone laughed or thanked me, it reminded me why I had chosen to stand up for myself. Weeks passed peacefully. Then, one morning, as I sat on the balcony sipping my tea, my phone rang. I saw Ryan's name flash on the screen. My heart tightened. When I answered, his voice was quiet and heavy. "Mom," he said, "I just wanted to tell you, I'm sorry." I was wrong. There was no pride in his tone anymore. "Just regret, I know," I said gently. "I never wanted revenge, Ryan. I just wanted respect. I wanted you to remember who I am, the woman who raised you, not someone to be thrown away." He sighed deeply. "Lily and we've been talking. We realized how selfish we were. We took you for granted, and we're both sorry." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." Then he asked, "Will you ever come back home?" I looked out at the ocean, watching the waves crash against the rocks. "I have a home now, Ryan. It may not be where you are, but it's where I belong. Maybe one day we'll meet again, as equals, not as mother and son divided by pride. There was a long silence. Then he whispered, "I understand." After the call ended, I felt a strange peace, not because everything was fixed, but because I had finally found closure. I had learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean returning. Sometimes it simply means letting go. As the months passed, Ryan sent photos of his baby learning to walk. He didn't say much, but each photo carried an unspoken message. "I miss you, Mom." I didn't reply to all of them, but I saved every single one. One evening, the retirement home hosted a family event. Families came to visit their parents, their grandparents. Laughter filled the air. I stood near the entrance, greeting guests, when I suddenly saw a familiar figure. It was Ryan. He was holding his baby, and Lily was beside him, looking nervous. He approached me slowly. "Mom," he said softly, "we wanted to see you." I looked at my grandson, smiling up at me with innocent eyes. I took his little hand and said, "Hello, sweetheart." Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "You look happy here." "I am," I replied gently. "Happier than I've been in a long time." He nodded. "You deserve that. We didn't need to say much else." Sometimes silence carries the words our hearts can't find. They stayed for the event that night. For the first time in years, we shared a quiet meal without anger or tension. Just peace. When they left, Ryan hugged me tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he whispered. I smiled and said, "I never did. I just needed to teach you what love truly means, that it can't exist without respect." As their car drove away, I stood under the soft evening lights, listening to the sound of the waves in the distance. My heart felt full. I had lost a house but found a home within myself. I had lost control but found peace. I had lost their respect but earned it back, the right way. That night, as I sat by my window watching the stars, I realized something simple yet powerful. No matter how late it seems, it's never too late to start over. You're never too old to find your voice again, and if someone ever makes you feel small, remember, your worth doesn't fade with age. It grows with every tear you've wiped, every storm you've survived, and every time you've stood tall after being broken. So to anyone listening right now, don't let anyone decide your value. Stand up, take control. Live for yourself, not for their approval. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Jean's Stories, where every tale reminds you that strength doesn't come from revenge, but from reclaiming your peace. Because sometimes, the best revenge is finally being happy. This was Jean's Stories, where pain finds power, and every ending becomes a new beginning. And every ending becomes a new beginning.